Anybody there?
All right.
Unless
Oh,
I hear it.
Eric reports. There is. Oh, sorry.
So we're all here. All right, I'd like to call to order the Public Safety Committee meeting for Monday, April 18th at 5:30 PM. And in doing so, do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes of the meeting on March 21st, 2022.
I'll second it, but I do have a comment, though. I note, it says those in attendance include Counselor Prakash, and those absent include Counselor Prakash. It has to be one or the other. And for the record, the absent one was Counselor O'Sullivan, I must point out. So I would just suggest that modification
Thank you.
on the motion. And that said, because I did not attend the meeting, I'm going to have to abstain on the vote when we get to that point, so.
Okay.
There you have it.
So, nope, so we accept
So you have a second with
we
a-
accept the
We accept the amendment.
changes.
Yeah,
changes.
I second it with an amendment, then when we get to the vote, just the record will reflect that I will abstain.
Okay. And all in favor, aye.
Aye.
2, and 1 abstention.
Yes.
Thank you, Bill. All right. With that being done, we'll move to public comment. Is anybody here from the public that would like to speak? We don't have anybody in our Zoom queue, so it's just from the audience here. And seeing nobody speaking, we will move on to departmental updates, starting with the fire department. Chief Gary.
Thank you, Ed. Just hit some of the normal report items. Responded to 52 incidents, brought our total to 155, recorded 231 training hours, and we had one injury, which I'll speak a little more in depth about shortly. Staffing, we have 64 active. The report says 62. However, between the time the report was written and today, we've had 2 more brought back online. We put 1 new member on. We had 1 resignation, 2 retirements, so we stayed buoyant right there. We do have 3 members in the pipeline, so hopefully they will be coming on in April. Had a lot of public information stuff go on in March with Jim Lamar's passing, and also with Charlie Matthews passing. We did a press release for an incident we had at 963 Elms Commons. And real quick, that incident was about 5 o'clock in the morning. We got called up there for smoke detectors activated. And as we walked in the lobby, we had a report of smoke up on the 4th floor. We sent a crew up there, and they had smoke coming out underneath the doorway of one of the apartments. They forced their way into the apartment. They found a lady who was injured, who had fallen. She landed actually in her bathtub. The breakfast she was cooking was burning on the stove. Decided to protect in place and get EMS up there because of the nature of the injury. They didn't want to move her. I guess the moral of that story was, there is no routine smoke detector activation or anything like that. You just got to expect the worst. We also had some public information go out for a structure fire on Richard Road, which I'll talk about a little bit more. For certification training, members enrolled in firefighter level 1 certification training, and 1 member enrolled in fire instructor 2 certification training. Fire instructor 2 is now the minimum level of training an instructor must have to conduct live burn training. So this is a necessity as our training program goes forward. Now, with that said, I'm going to move into a couple other things. COVID response. We continue to fine-tune our COVID precautions, and we base our restrictions on the current state guidelines. At this point, we are at 86% of the membership current with vaccinations. We went back to full crews on the apparatus and are conducting in-person training. And we currently have no members either on a COVID list or an exposure list. Tells us our plan's working, but we're going to continue to monitor and reevaluate and make appropriate modifications. We discussed a few times in the past couple months daytime incident response. Still have some concerns about the availability of personnel during the daytime. About 2 weeks ago, we had a structure fire on Richard Road, and the Rocky Hill membership available was 11. Okay, we activated the task force early. We got ourselves some help with the additional towns, and we were able to control the situation in a very timely manner. But what we're seeing is this is a region-wide problem. Personnel shortage is not just a Rocky Hill issue. We've discussed per diem help in the past, but we would only use this on a very limited and task-associated basis, meaning we would use that for hose testing, pump testing, duties of that nature. We're going to continue to watch this and report on it. As previously reported, the fire department has entered into a partnership with ConOSHA to proactively review our policies, procedures, and facilities. We had our first meeting in January where we looked at training, air management, respiratory protection, health and safety, and maintenance records. There were a number of recommendations which we were able to build into the appropriate policies, and all files have been closed out without further recommendations. Our next consultation is late May, May 26th, I believe. It's going to be a large time commitment, but it is working, making us more efficient. Back to the injury I reported on. We experienced a job-related accident in March where a member injured his foot while working at the scene of an incident. OSHA was contacted because he did spend a night in jail. I'm sorry. That's what happens sitting next to the police chief. He did spend a night in the hospital, and with a hospitalization, there's an OSHA notification. And OSHA was contacted, and as a result of their investigation, they reviewed the circumstances and closed the file on this injury with no recommendations. However, we're looking at it from an internal standpoint, reviewing our policies, and we're going to make changes to enhance the safety and effectiveness of our driver's training policies. And lastly, some good news. House Bill 5213, which includes payments to volunteer fire companies, was unanimously approved by the Appropriations Committee. This committee's a big hurdle, so things are looking positive for a potential adoption by the end of the season. And what that is refunding an existing bill that that provides payments to towns for response up to limited access highways. At this point, it would be $700 per company that goes up there. So we appreciate all the help we've gotten from you folks so far. The last thing, and I just received this about an hour ago, and this came off the Channel 30 website, but a lot of fire departments in the general area, as close as Newington, Weathersfield, Killingworth, East Windsor, are putting alerts up on their social media. Somebody out there is saying you can order fire department T-shirts and they provide you a link, and they say it's a fundraiser. Well, we're not selling any T-shirts. We're not fundraising like that. It's a scam. It's getting out in the news, but we wanted to bring it to your attention also.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Questions, Councilor O'Sullivan?
Yeah, so, Chief, circling back to that injury
Yes, sir.
incident that you made reference to. So, do we have anything in place to protect a volunteer who suffers an injury in connection with a call, which causes them to miss, period of time at their day job, so to speak? Do we provide disability coverage or something like that, or is there any kind of safety net that we provide for people in that situation?
Yes, we do. We do. The town has always guaranteed full coverage, and that's always happened. We have workman's comp through KERMA, plus there's also supplemental insurance through KERMA, and it works out very well.
So the workers' comp, so how does that apply here? Because you're suffering an injury based on a volunteer activity, not in your paying job, so to speak. So does workers' comp here somehow protect them, for loss of wages from their paying job? That, I guess,
The
that's what I'm referring to.
the workman's comp has assigned a annual salary figure to volunteers. So you get that annual salary figure, and the town has always made up any difference between the two. We've never, I can recall no shortages with that, and the town's been very gracious and generous with that type of coverage.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Prakash?
Yeah, so it looks like this bill coming out of the committee is good news. So once assuming it passes, when will you start getting the actual dollars? Like go in motion like right away, or as you respond?
I would, and I'm not 100% familiar with the bill process up on Capitol Ave, but I would assume once it's signed and signed by the governor, they assign the budget line to that account, and there's a procedure to fill out the request form through the Connecticut State Fire Administrator, and As I remember in the past, the checks would come monthly,
Excellent,
come right to the town.
excellent. So keeping our
Yeah,
fingers
well,
crossed.
Let's hope it happens.
Thank you,
Oh.
Chief.
John, would you have any insight on that? If a bill passed the Appropriations Committee, I always hear them say coming out of committee, but that means the committee's recommending it to the legislators, they have to
Right.
vote on it.
Yeah, most likely it'll be put in as part of the budget bill that will hopefully be passed at some
So this
point in
is a-
time. But I'm not sure whether it has to be passed by a House as well as a Senate committee and then go to the governor and he could sign it as well. It's a one-page bill. It's one of the simpler ones, and so on. So I think it's just more reviving it and appropriating money as well as assigning it to a department that would process it. So I don't think the mechanics on how you file it and get your money back is done, but I think it's well on its way to being put into place.
Thanks. All right, next on the, thank you for that report, Chief. Next on the departmental updates is the ambulance. And we noticed that there was no report in the packet just yet, but I see that you've dropped one off, and we thank you kindly. And we'll let you,
Okay. Hopefully this is what you guys are looking for. It's at least the first draft and, first time doing it in 20 years that the ambulance has been doing this stuff. So we can work on it. We can make it work. But if there's anything else that you guys are looking for, we can try to add it and whatever. So last month we had a total of 317 calls for the month of March. It brought our total up to 1,034. On the second page of the packet, it breaks down the calls for 2022. And it's broken down because you guys wanted to know what Rocky Hill does and then what Aetna does. And then that's the total combined calls for the year on the bottom line. Just so you can see that report there, okay? There were 7 canceled calls. 4 of them were no patient contacts, and 3 of them were canceled before we got arrival on scene. We had 3 lift assists for the month and 13 patient refusals. We had 1 opiate call for the month and no cardiac arrests for the month of March. The last page of the packet breaks down the year-to-date that you guys have asked for, which is on the last page. We've had 1 cardiac arrest since January, and we've had a total of 5 different opiate calls since January in town for the year-to-date calls that you guys were asking for. We did 46 hours of training for the month of March, which the first class was done on run form documentation and quality assurance, and the second one was done on sepsis for the month. On the front page, there's a breakdown of, we have a total of 61 members. How many active? We have 34 active riding members at the time. We have 8 associate, 11 probationary members, which are training and hopefully getting a couple of them cleared to get up and ride on their own. We have 3 out on medical leave. We have 4 out at school and college where they come during summer break to ride with us. And we have 1 that's stationed in Germany for a year on military leave. And other than that, there's nothing else on there. If you want to go through the packet, the third page in gives you calls broken down by dispatch, exactly from abdominal pains right down to weakness. It breaks it right down to exactly what we were dispatched for. The next page shows response times that you guys were looking for. 0 to 5 minutes, 5 to 10, 10 to 15, and the percentages there that we're running on the calls. The top one is lights and sirens, and then the second set of numbers are cold, that we're going with the flow of traffic. And then the last 2 things on the page were listed were when we were en route, if the police either slowed us down from responding hot and then told us to slow down, it's not an emergency, and then the other one was if the police got there, if we were going cold and they wanted us to step it up, then when they stepped it up, we've had 1 call of each. There was 1 was downgraded to no lights and 1 was upgraded to lights and sirens. The next page shows the report from Aetna ambulance that I get. That's breaking down their response times and their compliance rates. And then the one opioid call for the month, and then the refusals and non-transports that we do are on the other chart that I have for you there.
This is your response time.
That's correct. The next page
Is the Aetna.
is the Aetna one, right? Yep.
This is our response time sheet, one pager. This is Rocky Hill, and the one right behind it
I'm sorry, I thought it was labeled, but
is,
we didn't
it does
label
say
it.
Town of Rocky Hill, but it's the Aetna
Right, it's the Aetna, that's during the day.
daytime.
Yeah, that's mostly daytime coverage.
Any questions, Counselor O'Sullivan?
Thank you.
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack here, but no, really. And so first of all, I'll start with definitions. How do you define hot and cold?
Hot is lights and sirens, an emergency response.
Okay,
Cold is no lights, no siren, regular flow of traffic, like if you were driving from your house to here, nice and easy, not breaking the laws, not going through any stop signs or red lights.
yeah, and that is determined by,
The police dispatcher, and that's by the EMD. When the call comes into the town as a 911 call, they have a bunch of questions that they ask, and then where it falls on the charts, it'll tell them a hot response or a cold response, and we don't make that determination. We're told by dispatch how to do it.
okay. And can you break down, like, because I see like there are twice the number of calls on the first page. Maybe I should just start here. For Aetna, then Rocky Hill VA, right? How does that determine, like, who's going to take the call?
Time.
Time of day?
We're time of day.
Okay.
So 6 in the morning till 6 at night, Aetna does it. And obviously during those hours and during the weekday, this town is overwhelmed with people that work in town and different
Right.
people driving through the town and everything. At night, everything pretty much, people are already gone home that don't live in town. The
Right.
town is pretty empty. So after that, the response is after 6 o'clock is Rocky Hill. And then on the weekends, we're 24 hours,
Right,
Saturday and Sunday.
right. And just going to the response time, right? Just trying to unpack this a little bit. And again, I'm
No.
trying to understand.
No, I understand.
Just for my own, like, knowledge here. So the 4 boxes, right? Like, so,
Yep.
like, the first 2 I understand. The last 2 are like downgrade and upgrade.
Okay,
That is
yeah.
en route.
So in other words, we get the call, and the first one, the third item down, we were sent lights and siren for an emergency. And somewhere, somebody got on scene first, whether it was the paramedic or the police department, and told us to slow down, that we didn't need to go lights and siren to that call.
Right.
And then the last one on that page means that we responded to the call, cold, no lights, no sirens. And what happened is either the medic or the police department got there and said, it's worse than what we thought, can you get here, you need to get here quicker.
Got it. And what is the response mode? Just trying to, the 0, 1, 2?
Okay, yep, the modes, that's what I just asked my IT. The modes are just how they can stack them it has nothing to do with responses or anything. It's just to categorize, keep them in lines 3. It could be ABC, it's just 3 line, it's just what our program was set up to do to
Right.
set up the graph there.
Oh, okay. That's just index,
Yes.
essentially.
Correct.
Okay, and the 0 to 5 is the time, like the minutes? Like the
Yes.
next line over?
Yep.
The next column over,
Yep.
rather. And then, okay, and then it breaks it down by frequency, 53, 43, right? All right, and then, does it summarize anywhere, unless I missed it, like the average response time, like you have it for Aetna?
The next page is Aetna's response.
That is Aetna, right? The next page?
The next page is Aetna's, yes.
Right. But I'm trying to figure out, like, I mean, I can calculate it from here, but is there a response time number, average response time number on this page? I'm missing.
For-
There's a
for-
frequency.
For hours?
For yours, yeah.
No, we broke it down between 0 and 5, 5 to 10. and
Yeah,
then-
yeah.
Because it's the program that we have until 8 minutes and 59 seconds to get, or just under 9 minutes and, just under 10 minutes for hot calls. And after that, we have up to 13 minutes and 59 seconds to get for cold calls. So that's pretty much the reason. So for the hot calls, we've got one that we were over the limit, which means it could have been, that one call could have been 10 minutes right on the nose, or 10 minutes and 30 seconds, but it put us over the limit to get there.
Okay, yeah. I see what it is.
We didn't break it down per call.
Right,
Yeah.
right. That's what I was looking for, because I was looking for like,
It's an average for the month is what
Average
it comes
okay.
down, for the amount of calls that we do per month.
okay. So what is the benchmark for these things? Like from a state perspective or from just best practices perspective?
Those are the guidelines set by the state. We're obligated by the state for those times.
And that's why you say like if
9
you're
minutes and under. and
Yeah.
9 minutes
14
and under, and
With
those
14
are the
minutes and
state,
under,
okay.
Right.
And, yeah, Aetna has to be under that as well?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
okay. All right. I guess that's it for now. I try to digest this. This is quick, so.
If there's any
But
other
thank you.
questions, you could try. I tried,
Thank you.
We tried to do the best we could with it.
Sure, absolutely. This is-
No, it's a great start. Thank you for putting this together.
I
yeah.
appreciate it.
So, how many shifts per week do you cover?
Okay, Monday through Friday, we're on every night, 6 PM to 6 AM.
Yep.
And then on Saturdays and Sundays, we're on 24 hours.
24 hours.
Yep, we go home at Monday morning at 6 o'clock.
All right. So what are the? how do
Aetna
you- how-
hours is during the day from 6 in the morning, Monday through Friday.
What's a shift?
6 to 6.
6 to 6?
Aetna does 6 to 6 during the day, and we do 6 to 6 at night.
And,
So you'd have 2 shifts on the weekend.
On the weekends, we have 2 shifts, yes.
and just kind of changing it up the line of questioning just a little bit. Do you have like a collection rate? I know in the past, the ambulance chief would tell us how your billing structure is, but do you go to a resident's home
Mm-hmm.
and you send them an invoice after you've
We take down all our information. We subcontract through a company in town, CAG, the Certified Ambulance Group. They do all our billing for us.
okay.
And then we submit the insurance, we get whatever payments we can for it, and
And we're kind of aware in the past that if some folks couldn't pay it, you'd invoice them twice.
things
and
haven't,
then
things haven't changed. We're still
nothing's
sticking.
changed there.
No, we would not do that to the citizens of Rocky Hill.
So do you have a collection rate, an idea of how many people actually do respond with a payment?
Oh, well, being in Rocky Hill, a lot of people have health insurance, so.
So,
The last number I knew, we were in the mid-90s. I mean, we have a pretty good collection rate. Not necessarily getting 100% of what we want for the call, depending on what the insurance pays for, but we do receive something,
you do receive
yes.
something.
And like you said, if there is a difference, we will submit a bill to the person. If we get a payment, that's great. If not, we send a second one. After that, we don't go to collections.
And so there's this notion that dispatch has about 90 seconds, a call comes in, and you get it to the correct, dispatch gets it to the correct department, and tag you're it. You have a call to go to, which you have a standard of 9 minutes hot. You get the call, the clock starts your 9 minutes.
Once we get the call, yes. But if, depending on how many minutes
Yep.
it takes for a dispatcher to talk to the person on the phone, those numbers don't equate in it, because obviously we don't know the calls even existed yet.
When does the stopwatch stop on you? When you reach
When we pull
the,
up to the house, yes, when we get to the scene.
in the house or to the
When we
property?
pull, we don't,
You don't
when
have-
we pull up to if we're pulling up to an intersection, we tell, 370, we're arrival on scene. You know,
Gotcha.
if we're pulling up in front of your house, we would do the same. That way we'd get our equipment and everything. We would have to make sure that we were all, you know, with COVID and everything now, we have to make sure that we're all gowned up. We have to make sure we're properly dressed for the call before we go into the house. So that could take a couple extra minutes. But the response time is from the time that the tones drop and the call is ours, like you say, and then once we get to the scene.
And
Not
once you-
necessarily in with the patient or anything like that. Now, a lot of times the medic would be there, especially at night. The medic might be there before us. And those by the state is, you know, any medical coverage that's at the patient's side or on scene is what the state goes by for response times. So even if we're a couple minutes behind the paramedic, our obligation from the town point and from the ambulance town point of view for the state is that we're on time.
Okay. And one final question I have is, on your calls, your year-to-date is 134. Do you have what the prior year was? Do you have a sense, are you running comparable
so
to
this-
last year?
This whole thing here, that where our call, on the second page you're looking at,
Yep.
right? Yep, we've done 301, Rocky Hill has.
Yep.
Okay. I have the whole 2021 already filled out because it's, and saved and archived. If you'd like to see last year's, you know, the next
So
meeting.
that's generally where we end up going for counselors, is a comparison so that we have some sort of basis. So yes, if you could
Okay, I'll put that
have
next.
last year's number to this year's number, and then that's the way it keeps going forward as we work on your reporting. Because
Understood.
then that gives us an idea if there's something else going on, underlying community issue or something.
No problem.
Thank you. You guys are all set?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Next up is the police report. Chief Custer.
Okay, so while we're on the topic of reports, you probably noticed at the back of your packet that there's some additional charts now from the police department as well. So the one question I do have for you, so we have our big monthly activity sheet.
Yep.
But then we have some specific stats that we're tracking that follows. Those are all color-coded. Are you getting color copies?
Yes,
You are?
these are color copies. yeah.
Okay, because if it was being,
Just two colors, right?
Well, the charts.
Charts are 4 colors, yeah.
Charts are 4 colors, but
Charts are
your main grid,
the main grid is black and white. Yeah, because you wouldn't really be able to tell if it.
Exactly.
And I wanted to make sure you're getting color. Okay.
Yeah.
But, you'll notice that we made some additions. We added catalytic converter thefts to that grouping because that's something we've been tracking, we've been talking about. We also added, since we had some space on the sheet, underneath that second box, month-to-month comparisons. So now you can do a year-to-year as well, month-to-month. So at the risk of getting too smart for our pants, you know, if you need anything else different, let us know. But, you know, we thought that might be helpful as well. Okay, so with that said, let me go through the main monthly activity for the month of March 2022. Calls for service continue to run a little high, 4,396 for the month of March. 11 criminal arrests for the month, and 36 motor vehicle accidents investigated, 29 of which were non-injury, 7 with injuries. And we're also starting to see from last year the motor vehicle accident rate, you know, as people are coming back to work, and it's kind of starting to dip up a little bit as well. Infractions issued for the month were 77 warnings. We're at 557 for a total of 634 motor vehicle stops for the month of March. And our training hours for the month were 124. On the staffing front, we're presently at full staffing, sworn and civilian side. However, we do have 3 officers, or I should say 2 officers and a civilian out on light duty. 2 officers, one a sergeant and the other patrol officer on light duty. Non-work related injuries. Hopefully the sergeant will be back next week. The officer is anticipated to return, I believe, the end of the, mid-May. And then in addition to that, we do have one civilian dispatcher who is out on family medical leave through the 15th of May as well. Let's see, updates on other projects and activities that we've been reporting on. The last month I reported we met with the representatives from Recor. That is the company that's going to be handling our LPR camera system in town. So we took them to all the locations and highlighted the areas where we felt they would be most useful. So now they're taking all that data and information back. They told us it's going to be about a 90-day turnaround with their proposal, how to implement same. So as soon as I get that, I'll report that to the committee here. We continue to participate on the Greater Hartford Regional Auto Theft Task Force. For the month of March, the task force recovered an additional 14 stolen motor vehicles. They effected 8 stolen motor vehicle arrests. They recovered 1 firearm during the month, and they served 12 warrants during the course of their activities. So they continue to be very active and doing a good job. Our motor vehicle thefts in town have started to decrease, and again, I do think there's a direct impact because of what's going on with this regional unit. A new development that I just wanted to make the committee aware of is, and I think on the fire side we've talked about it, town has a drone, and we've been working with the fire department, training with the fire department, representatives from both agencies that are interested have received training on how to utilize the drone. And the police department at least is at the point now where we've had 5 officers trained and ready to deploy and utilize the drone if necessary. So we've gotten the 5 of those individuals through the training. We developed policy. I think, Mike, you're still working on policy on the fire side.
We're just 90% done.
But I can safely say that's a resource that's available for the town as of right now if it was needed. So that's a good thing as well. And then last but not least, now that we've gotten the additional staffing on board, there's only 1 officer currently going through field training. So we've slowly gotten everybody else through, and as those staffing levels have beefed up, thanks to the council over the past year or 2, I should say, we're finally able to start getting proactive in dealing with some of the problems we've experienced in town. So we've broken out some of those officers still in patrol, but they become part of a community response unit that will be responsible for dealing with crime trends, hotspots, any issues that we may have in town. We're going to leave these officers unplugged from patrol so that they can focus, and it could be anything from stop sign violations, right, motor vehicle violations, to catalytic converters and everything in between. So, this is the beauty of having the proper number of officers, allowing us to get proactive. So they just recently formed up about 2 weeks ago. So as they start submitting their accomplishments, I'll include those as well in the monthly report. And that's all I have.
Councilor O'Sullivan.
A couple questions. So, Chief, on the with the drone, so can you just give some examples of the type of activities that you can see working the drones kind of into the equation to help you do your jobs better?
So we've kept it fairly broad and non-specific, but what we're thinking would be, for instance, crime scenes, aerial overhead, camera shots, video of crime scenes, specifically probably motor vehicle accidents come to mind.
Accident reconstruction, I guess, maybe?
Accident
Aerial view.
reconstruction, search and rescue.
Absolutely.
I mean, it could be anything. You get a report of possible marijuana growing field over a large meadow. It could be utilized for something like that. Being it's so new and it's new technology, we don't really have any other specific usage in mind. I don't know if I missed anything from the
It
fire
has a
side.
tracking feature where you can lock on to a target, type it into the screen, it'll follow that target wherever it goes. There's a great number of features with it. As the chief said, we do have a considerable number of operators, and it takes quite a bit to operate. You actually have to get an FAA license to operate it. And then there's a great deal of procedure that goes in with it. But we've actually done crime scene mapping in town. We've done motor vehicle accidents in town. The Parks Department recently reached out, and they want their fields mapped for future planning. So there's just a lot of stuff you can do with it. And I know I took that a little broader than the PD side, but it's also kept at Fire Station 1 in the Police Department Mobile Command Unit. So that'll get run out with that, and that helps keep the batteries fresh on a trickle charger, et cetera.
Okay.
It assisted tremendously when we had the distributions, the COVID distributions for masks and test kits. We were able to count how far out on the vehicles with the drone. We could have cut the line almost exactly with what we had available in supplies. So it was a huge help then. Thank you.
That makes sense. So one question, Chief Custer, on the training that goes with the drone usage. So does part of the training include the legal issues associated with drones? Because, in effect, a drone is kind of a warrantless search.
Right.
And you get into this question of what is under the Constitution, what is a reasonable search of a drone if it's up 2,000 feet versus, 20 feet? At a certain point, it's looking like a search. So have you gotten into that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the curriculum. Most of the training is online, and then there's practical training with the actual usage of the device, which I believe was handled by Chief Gentili.
Yes.
And so, yes, there is a discussion of those things. We're not using infrared to look into houses or buildings or anything like that. We're trying to steer away from any of those potential legal traps. So if we can just kind of limit it at this point to, accident reconstruction, location, search and rescue type of situations, I think that's the smart and prudent thing to do.
Okay. And then just shifting topics, get back to the issue of the catalytic converter theft. So we talked a couple meetings ago. There was an act being drafted in the Capitol to possibly creating more reporting requirements on the part of junkyards when they're buying catalytic converters. Limiting the number of transactions and having to maintain a log, that sort of thing. Do you have any update on that, Bill?
Still ongoing. I suspect, from what I'm hearing, you're going to see something. If nothing else, for feel-good purposes. How effective, however, I'm skeptical. And the problem being, it's great that if Connecticut outlines these strict requirements for catalytic converters, but if the criminal can simply go over state line and unload these in Rhode Island or New York, how effective is it going to be? So that is the current concern from our standpoint. I've shared that with our representatives. They're going to take that into consideration, but again, I don't know how much they can really control on that kind of a situation. But I do think you're going to see a bill pass.
Yeah, even if it starts here, but if
Yeah.
you can then shop it to other states, as kind of a model act, and even get the neighbors to adopt it, maybe make something happen. So,
Keep
okay,
our fingers crossed.
makes sense. Okay, thanks for the report.
Councilor Prakash?
Yeah, Chief, so thank you for putting this together. There's two items, actually. So first one, the charts are really good. The only one suggestion on that, if we can keep the colors consistent between the two.
Okay.
Like
good point,
the
good point.
blue, it's kind of like, it's easier to read. Like I was trying to do the mental gymnastics. So
Okay.
yeah, you know what I mean, right?
Yeah,
2022, if you look at that.
That's easy enough. That was the first draft, so.
Yes, that's why I reckoned, that's why. So, but thank you for putting it together. Second, the other question I had was about speeding in town. I have heard like a lot of people, just in my conversations, talk about New Britain Avenue, where I live very close to it as well, and that's why probably, because I have a lot of friends there. It's like a speeding, like crazy speeding zone, and I can see it. Like I drive through it too. People are like at 70 miles an hour on that road. Like I mean, I'm guessing. I don't know. I don't have a radar. But is there any way? Like I know, like on Cromwell Avenue, we do have sometimes like presence in those lots, like the on the side in CVS and all that. Is there any way to like actually have continued like presence of any kind on New Britain Avenue? And I can tell you, even on Kobe Road, like off of New Britain, where I live, again, I can tell you anecdotally, people drive like really, really fast on that like small road. So I think just speeding in general is a concern, I think, around town. And I hear it more and more. I don't know if it is just people notice it more or is it actually more, but there's no way to tell for me. But people have been talking about that, especially New Britain Avenue. So I wanted to bring it to your attention as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Listen, statewide speeds have gone up. The last 2 years, motorists have enjoyed the luxury of less volume, a lot more space, and the speeds. So now as more people are returning to work, it's hard to go back to that old mode. So we have got a number of complaints. We track all the complaints from the citizens in town, and we use directed patrols, and we're going to use this unit now to go out and target those areas. New Britain Avenue is certainly one of them. And depending on time of day, yeah, speeds can get really up there.
Yeah.
So we are aware of it. Do what we can.
Okay. And is there any, I mean, I don't know, like, can there be like, I don't know what the right word is, like spot checks or whatever, like, you stand there for 3 days, or I don't know what the technical term is for that, but, I've seen like, the speeds begin being enforced like other places, like you'll suddenly find a police car like there, right? And
Right.
so I don't know if I'm talking about deterrence, I guess, like,
The key is consistency, because the problem with you set a special directed patrol, it's like the speed control sign, right? It slows down while the sign is there, and then when we move it to the next complaint, the speeds come right back. Same thing when the cruiser's not there. So we're trying to establish now, with the staffing we have, consistent directed patrols. We call them traffic posts.
Okay.
At those problem areas. So hopefully that'll make a difference.
Yeah, the traffic posts, I guess that's the term. I will remember that next time.
And this is the community response unit.
Correct. That'll be one of their responsibilities.
This is for speeding hotspots. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Chief.
You're welcome.
All right. Before we jump over to emergency management, I have one last question. I wanted to jump back to Chief Goodrich on the ambulance. Total number of members, 61, active or writing. I seem to remember we used to be maybe up in the around 80, 90 membership range. Is that
No, we were always in
Oh.
the low 70s.
70s?
Yeah, we were in the 70s before. We had a bunch of people retire.
And are you doing a recruiting now to get back up to the 70, or
well, we
61
have-
the new
We have
normal?
an EMT class going now, and then we're going to be having another one in the fall. So we're always recruiting at all times.
Thank you. All right, emergency management.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just your COVID update. The numbers have changed a little bit since this report came out on April 10th. We're now up to 747,000 cases. 3,000 have been reported in the past 7 days.
Could you say that total again?
747,000 cases.
747,000.
And that 3,000 number has jumped to 4,095 over the past 7 days. 145 patients are currently hospitalized, and the laboratory confirmed that 57% are not fully vaccinated out of all hospitalized patients. Rocky Hill has returned to the 15 per 10,000, which put us in the red zone again. But again, we're monitoring that closely. I think things are planing out this week. So we'll see what happens as we go through the remainder of the week. We assisted in the funeral planning coverage for Captain Lamar Services by assisting with out-of-town coverage and doing escorts to the locations for fire calls. We had the tabletop CALIA exercise for the police department, was held on March 30th, 2022 at PD headquarters. As you know, that scenario was a large-scale event that occurred in town. We had many of the town agencies were well represented, and upon conclusion, we provided the proper support to help mitigate that emergency. So I want to thank those departments for taking time out of their busy schedules to attend. Last Thursday, we had a senior center safety preparedness class, which we held. We had 18 attendees, which was good. We discussed, what proper steps to take in the event of any natural or man-made disaster that comes about. We had plenty of FEMA handout material that we dispersed to all the attendees. And one of the lucky recipients won a preparedness kit that was donated by Mary Hogan in the library, which was great. So she had done that. We're going to be visiting the library in June to do another class. So we'll be representing emergency management there, and again, looking at possibly starting the community emergency response team or the CERT team. Last week, we also did some general custodial training for the Board of Education to keep them in compliance with their OSHA training. So I worked with the Board of Education, did an all-day class in the high school for all the custodians. Below are some of those projects that we're working on. The CERT team, we're hoping to start recruiting for that and putting out some messages for that. In the next couple of months, I'll be working with the senior center as well as the library and putting it up on the websites. We had the tabletop event, which we completed for the PD. Sheltering guidelines and non-emergency situations has been completed. Documentation will be distributed at the next staff meeting. And we're looking forward to the active shooter over the summer, the ALICE program. We'll be doing that in probably June or July. And there were no localized emergencies that required emergency management to come out over the past month.
Councilor O'Sullivan.
No questions, thank you.
Councilor Prakash.
Yeah, so I have been thinking about this for a little bit, but I think since you've gotten your bearings now in the job, like for a little bit now, so it's, I think, an opportune time to ask this. I raised this question to the town manager as well before about cyber attacks. Where does it fall, like, in terms of emergency management, right? I don't know, like, from a state perspective, does it fall under emergency management activities, right, which you can actually get trained for? Like, so what I'm trying to get at is, like, is there any way Steve could, like, work with our IT department to have a process or a procedure if in case of a cyber attack on our town infrastructure, right? So
I don't really know. I tend to think the focus would be on the IT department handling it right away. I don't know really what Steve would step in and do, because John Nowakowski has a number of support services that manages that and so on. So I don't know what the degree would turn over to Steve, because it's basically working on, the intra.
So John, I
structure,
used it
so.
that as an example, but let's say, like, if the police department systems get compromised or something. I don't know, like, what is the degree of connectedness there, right, from a town perspective, from a technical standpoint.
So I think if you had attended,
Well,
so
yeah,
the
you-
tabletop exercise really kind of outlined how we would deal when a fire takes out a system or a building is occupied and takes down a network.
But what I'm suggesting is, like, in terms of, like, the overall town infrastructure, like, the police is another example, but what is our dependence on what, John Murphy and team does on everything running properly in town? I'm just,
That's part of their responsibility to oversee that, so they should have a good idea what's going on. A lot of it could be, you might say it's a cyber attack, or it could be some piece of equipment that's breaking down and items like that. So, you know, the IT people would be under the hood looking for those things and, you know, researching what's going wrong in the police department and so on. I don't know if Steve in emergency management, where he comes in when he wants to look into how our
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to
system
get at. Like, if there is a state, you know,
I
if
think
state has any,
Yeah, there's some state agencies that are out there, CTIC, so on, and you know, a lot of agencies that support cyber attacks. Most cyber that occurs goes through, you know, you alert the insurance, and they also have a response team to assist. But with those, I think like what you're looking for is what the vulnerabilities are. Like,
yeah,
when-
and what would
is
you
there a
do?
chance that could happen, and what would we do?
Yeah, and what would be the process? Like, even let's say, like, you have to get in touch with the state. Let's say, do we have a blueprint for that? Like,
I believe John mentioned that in our last staff meeting, that, you know, he does have plans in place should something go wrong, because we did address it at that tabletop. Not to the full extent, but we did address it. You know, how do we handle moving the infrastructure of the town? And he has backup plans for that. So I'm assuming he has an emergency preparedness plan. I can check on it and report back for the next meeting and just give you a recap on it. If you'd
yeah, that would be great, because then in that case, you know, our IT department is connected with Steve, right? So I think that cannot be. I don't think, you know, over communication is a bad thing. Under communication is generally the problem.
Well, Steve could be helpful communicating with our Region 1 or Region 3 people, and they could contact the appropriate state people, agencies.
Yeah, just to keep it on our radar, because I think these things happen with more frequency nowadays, and it just worries me. It could be, I mean, it's just like pick a name in the hat, like kind of thing. Like, it happens to like small towns, big towns, all size, all shapes of towns nowadays. If you read the New York Times, it's like everywhere, like, you know, every few months there is a town which you never heard of. Sometimes it's really big, it's Baltimore, but then there are like towns like us. So I just want to keep it on our radar, that's all. So
Yeah, I'll get information, and if you'd like, and bring it back at the next meeting. I'll meet up with John and just see where his plan's at.
thank you.
Sure.
Thanks, Chuck.
Sure, Steve, you were the Kerma representative when we did the cyber training 3 years ago, or
Yep.
just before the pandemic. And Dana runs the cyber training for in-house through Kerma. So it would probably
I think they just
time to get Kerma to come in and redo that
just
cyber
had
training.
it last
training,
2
yeah.
weeks ago.
Oh, you did, okay.
Yeah, so
All
they
right.
brought everybody in just to raise the awareness
Yep.
in-house, so, yeah.
Just to highlight the way things change, at that first one, way back, we were handing out shutters so that all the cameras on the screens, so nobody would have to stop the camera action.
Right.
And that's virtually not happening anymore, as we're
That's
all
the
on
least of
Zoom
the
meetings
problems.
and you know, using that. But that was one area that was highlighted, and we were shutting that down just as we needed to open it back up and say, okay, the cameras on these monitors are serving a good purpose. But, so I'm sure there's a number of other changes in the cyber world as well.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for that report. And do we do not have a Central Health District report?
Charles was on the screen when the time the meeting was starting. I don't know if he's still there. But he was invited.
Okay. I did not notice him up, so I think we have some COVID numbers from Emergency Management Director Steve Pendle, so we'll move to, if Charlie pops up, we'll jump over to him. Any new business, John, or no?
No.
Other?
The only other one is, last week, we got that notification from the state about the Maple View Convalescent Home might be going on strike on the 22nd. I don't know if you got any more updates, Mike, than
Heard
from
anything.
last week, whether it's still pending or settled.
Still pending.
So, yeah, Mapleview Manor, potential strike on
Yep.
April 22nd.
Appreciate that notice, that heads up. All right. I still think Charlie is out of it, so we'll take
He's
a
back.
Oh, no.
There he
He's
is.
back.
Can you all hear me?
Charlie went away to get a snack.
Excuse me?
We can hear
It's
you.
okay. Welcome back, Charlie. I was just joking.
Yeah, I've had trouble hearing you the entire time, so it's hard for me to interact. So I apologize for that. I don't know if the microphones are not picking you guys up as you normally are. Normally, you come in very clearly. Just to give my report, currently at Rocky Hill, total number of cases for the town as of the 18th stand at 3,749. Total deaths to COVID are steady at 147. Rocky Hill is currently in the red alert phase, according to the color code system the state uses, at 18.8 cases per 100,000 over the last 2-week period. Cases are steadily increasing across the state for the state of Connecticut. It's not going up as precipitously as we had seen during Delta and the first Omicron outbreak. But the numbers, I think, are kind of hampered a little bit due to the number of home tests that we're seeing. So the numbers that are reported are going to be diluted somewhat. So that's something to kind of take in as with a grain of salt. All the numbers that we see, even though we are in the red alert phase, are actually probably higher due to the fact that home tests are not included in those numbers. That's where we stand right now, and I stand ready to answer any questions.
Councilor O'Sullivan.
Yeah, I'm just, I'm sort of intrigued about how the home testing, interacts with the official reported data, because people are taking home tests who test positive, they're not reporting in, but people take home tests and test negative, they're not reporting in either. So can you explain why the assumption is that the prevalence of home testing is resulting in an undercount?
Yeah, there will be an undercount is what we're anticipating. How much that is hard to say, but it is something that even the state recognizes, that the number of tests, as we're looking at the number of cases, is never going to be an exact at this point, because the number of home tests and the availability of those tests. I would say that most people that are actually getting tested at this time are actually utilizing home tests. Most of the cases that we see reported through laboratories are either done in conjunction with some kind of medical procedure, or if someone is confirming a home test through PCR. So there may be a significant more cases out there in the community. I just urge everyone to continue to take precautions, to ensure that they're vaccinated, as their vaccinations are up to date, and really, to wear a mask where it's appropriate. It's still a good tool in the toolbox.
So let me just clarify my question. So certainly the availability of home testing will reduce the raw count on number of cases, but when you're talking about the percentage, the infection rate, my question is, does home testing have any bearing on that as well? Because, as I said, initially, when we take a home test, positive or negative, it's not getting reported either way. So is there reason to believe that the prevalence of home testing is skewing the percentage figures in any way?
It's very difficult to understand you. I'm sorry, I can't.
Bill,
Because you can't hear me?
Yeah, speak loudly and I'm good.
Okay, so up close to the microphone. So my question is with respect to the prevalence of home testing, where people who test at home, the results positive or negative are not being reported. So certainly when the positive tests are not being officially reported, the raw numbers of people infected is going to be undercounted. But as far as the percentage figures are concerned, the percentage of people testing who are coming out positive, is there any reason to believe that the prevalence of home testing has any effect on that data?
No, not at this time. I mean, what we're looking at, overall with the percentages right now, what we can see in the reported data, I mean, it's almost a bellwether that the percentages for that may be similar to what we would see with a home test, positive versus negative. It's just difficult to tell right now. What we've been trying to focus on is to use the data that's reported through the state systems as, almost as that bellwether of what the trends overall are going to be. And we have seen those trends increasing. So it becomes almost like the canary in the mine shaft. So it allows us to be able to say, yeah, cases overall are increasing. So take precaution.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Prakash?
No, I have no questions, but just to, piggyback on, Councilor Sullivan's point here, like, I think that you're talking about the denominator. Like, I mean, if you think like you test more, if you will have higher rate of positivity at home than elsewhere, then I think those numbers will be affected. But if you randomly have a random sampling and you have the same rate of positivity at home as you have in a professional setting, then those numbers should kind of wash out. So the rate should not be affected by that. Now, how many people are taking the test maybe is a different question, right? But yeah, so that was an intriguing question, and I think that's a good question to ask. So, but
Yeah,
I don't have any
and
questions. Really.
I will say this about the home test: some of the reliability for the test has come into question for some of the home tests that were distributed during the wintertime, just because of cold chain. The tests aren't really supposed to get below 40 degrees, but those that were sitting in, sitting inside of mailboxes, you really couldn't tell how cold it was in January when they were sent out. So, there is some question with regard to accuracy and reliability for those tests. For me, once again, I mean, I think that as we continue to move on, keeping an eye on the total trends is really where we stand. The biggest thing that we're looking at is hospitalizations as well, because the more cases that we see, if people are vaccinated appropriately, hopefully they won't be severe cases. But we're actually continuing to see a small rise in hospitalizations. In the past week, there were 44 additional hospitalizations across the state, and that number continues to go up steadily. So it is something to keep an eye on.
Okay. Thank you, Charlie.
All right. Charlie, ambulance has reported only one opioid incident, so we're still seem to be in that kind of mode. Whereas I know your district does encompass the Berlin Turnpike, and I'm wondering if you're seeing different numbers.
Yeah, I don't have opioid numbers today. I'll try to get those round up and send off to Ed.
All right, good. Thank you. Thank you for your report. And do we have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn?
Second.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye. Oh, yeah.